All right, we're live, man. Episode 94, This Life in Tech. I'm Jason.
Back from Michigan, Michigan Gangster Dan.
Michigan Gangster Dan. Your background looks like the Hall of the Emperor
Oh,
in Warhammer 40,000.
yeah, it is.
For the Emperor.
Yeah. Oh, dude, I'm beat. I'm tired. Uh, the it, it I keep saying it after every weekend that the learning there. I mean, it's intense. It is. So Thursday started at 3 o'clock and didn't end until 7:30, and Friday's 8 to 6. You get like a couple of breaks in between. Saturday it's 8 to 5:30, and it's nonstop. Because
Are
even
you?
after, go ahead.
I was gonna say, are you flying up every time or driving up?
No, it's a 2.5 hour drive.
Yeah.
For me to fly there, because there's no direct flight from South Bend to Detroit,
Right.
like that. So, but then I done on that like Thursday night, then it's group sessions because we got to study because of stuff we got to turn in the next day. So I mean, I'm not getting there. It's literally you're up at 7 a.m. and you're not getting to bed till like 11 p.m. Some of the people then even go out and they're drinking until like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, no, thank you. And I mean, there's the thing, like almost everyone there is doing something already related. I kind of get it because doing my degrees for computer science, it was the same way. Like I already know all this stuff. I don't need to do any of it because I've already got it. Well, that's
Right.
and a lot of them have it. They just need a couple of the pieces, but all these beginning things are all the financial analysis and accountings and stuff like that.
Well, right. It's probably like when we were doing our masters, insofar as you're really just looking like for a 10% increase on your salary, so to speak.
Yeah.
Not making the next expansion or the next transition laterally,
Right.
which is a completely different ballgame.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because most of the people that I remember being in my masters with, they didn't do anything like this. So some of them didn't even have an undergrad in computer science. They somehow got into the field and now they're trying to learn all these other things, which is kind of where I'm at. And I can appreciate all the people that are able to go out and party while they're up in Ann Arbor. That's just not what I'm able to do because, well, this is all completely foreign to me. I'm enjoying it.
Well, I'll tell you, man, I think a function of it is getting older for me, and a function of it is what I'm trying to aim at. But I'll give you an example. Come to find out here, because the culture is still closely coupled to farming, there is this event at the end of the harvest season, which is very recent, where all the farms create what's called chicken stew. And I've never had this or seen it before. It's essentially like a thick chicken soup, man. It's actually quite tasty. But they full on get like the witch's cauldron and put it out over a fireplace outside and brew this stuff all day long. And then starting at a certain time, people around the community start trickling in, and everybody brings their own little mug, and you dip it in and get your chicken stew and eat it around a bonfire. Man, it was glorious, man. It was glorious. And so I'm sitting there thinking about this, and like they take the kids on a hayride because everybody has their own tractor and shit, right? And they've already rolled and baled their last hay harvest. And I'm standing there looking at the sunset over all these gorgeous trees, because this is really, I don't remember really having a true autumn when I was in Maryland for that year. So I'm going to say this is the first real autumn I've experienced in probably 20 years, because you don't get the seasons in Southern California. And I was sitting there thinking, well, I could be like some of these people boozing it up and partying. But what I was really looking forward to was eating my stew, making some coffee. And I came back last night and had a conversation with another friend of mine who, this is my friend that's the philosopher.
Okay.
And we're working on a book that is a mix between pure philosophy from his perspective and the technological embodiment of that philosophy from my perspective. And part of what we were talking about, which ties to what you're saying, is he's encountered resistance from technologists around him because he's a professor too. So he goes to the computer science department or the cyber department, whatever, and asks questions. And nobody wants to answer because they get offended that he's in some way pointing out that there's something flawed in the technology or in their perspective of it. And what I told him was, it's probably because none of those people have a liberal arts background. So they don't value the questioning of what they perceive to be an absolute.
Right. It's funny that you mentioned that. I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast where Neil deGrasse Tyson is on there.
Mm-hmm.
And he had mentioned, and I might get this a little bit wrong, but essentially he was like, there's three truths that exist. There is, and this is the word I might have wrong, we'll just say it's actual universal truth, which is the most important. So my definition will be correct, but I might be using the wrong word of what he meant. The universal truth is essentially where the study has been repeated with multiple countries, multiple different population groups around the world. And the example he gave was where everyone believed cholesterol was such a bad thing. They did all these studies all over the place. Everyone makes a shift. But the one country that did not do that study at that time was France. All of a sudden they do it. And now everyone's like, oh my gosh, we were all wrong. It's not necessarily this. And now they're repeating and they're finding all these other things. So universal truth has to be studied all over the place and it takes many, 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 many years. And then there's personal truths. Personal truth is like your religious beliefs. No matter what you say to someone, unless you're, forcing them or someone persuaded, that's their own truth, like how they believe in their religion. And for that, I'm not going to take that away from them. That's what they believe. And then there's political truth. Like, what is Clinton's first name? And he's like, Hillary? He goes, no, it's Crooked Hillary. Because after all the stuff that we hear, all we heard was Crooked Hillary. He goes, so, I don't want to live in a world or a society to where someone's going to try to take their personal truth and force it on me to become universal truth. Everyone believes that I'm an atheist. I'm not an atheist. Not by the definition. Because I believe in the sentiment of people's personal truths and how they evolved. I am huge into NASA, and a friend of mine was going up to the space station. So I said to him, Godspeed, and on Facebook, and then every atheist proceeded to crush me. And they, how could you do that as an atheist? One, I don't want to be associated with those kind of people. Two, there is a ton of historical relevance to saying that in NASA.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then he goes, and this is something I didn't know. You might know this, but he had said, but everyone forgets the origins of goodbye. Do you know what goodbye stands for?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's the same background as Godspeed.
Yeah. I didn't know this. I honestly didn't know this. So I learned something. It was actually an acronym with God be with you.
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. He goes, so are you going to stop saying goodbye to people? No. Right. So there's a ton of this, and I don't want to take that away from anyone, and nor am I going to argue with someone about their religious beliefs, because that's a part of you. So it was, those three truths were something very interesting to me. But maybe this is kind of like that, the aspect which you're talking, most of these technologists, like, I don't have a true liberal arts background, but I did with my undergrad, with the amount of humanities classes and my quest for philosophy and learning more about how to think. Maybe that's just the reason why I feel so good debating about certain things, because I don't have to be right. I want to learn something.
Well, I also think it's why you see such poor writing skill. I mean, because writing is a liberal art, fundamentally.
That could very well be.
Well, so people not only are crippled in their ability to think, which is a liberal art, but because they're crippled in their ability to think, let's say think critically, that directly impacts their ability to write. Write being a codification of memory, of thought, right? That's what I mean by memory. Well, to go back to your God be with you, that's still manifested in the Catholic Church. I mean, it's part of the mass rituals is to turn to your neighbors and say, God be with you and also with you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's still around.
Oh, yeah. I just didn't realize that goodbye was that, you know.
Yeah. Well, so as a heathen, as a pagan, what you say is blessed be.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Nobody thought that was funny last night. We're all standing on this giant cauldron, and there's literally like a big stick in it that people are taking turns stirring because you got to keep it going. And I cracked some wise joke about, which entity are we summoning now? Who has the salt for the circle? And did somebody get the right number of crow's feet and troll's tongues? And nobody laughed. Nobody thought it was funny.
Well, you're in the wrong area for that. Yeah. So.
Hey, man.
But I mean, that's the thing. People don't. They don't want to explore. Like this is like no different. I keep trying to explain to people, at least from my perspective, because at the bank they want to talk about blockchain, things like that. How are we going to implement it? And I just say I don't have any interest in it.
Right.
What do you mean? I'm like, well, what happens if this company implements this version and this company implements that version? They have to share information and they're not compatible because there's no standard for blockchain that's been created by IETF or IEEE. I mean, I don't think it'll be an IEEE thing. It's not a signaling protocol like Ethernet or Wi-Fi. So it would fall under IETF as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's fair. I think it's fair to call blockchain a technology. I think at least you and I and some other people would agree that it's not a stable technology.
Well, I mean, and the theory is sound. The
implementation
isn't because there's no standard.
Right. Right. I mean, DES encryption is still a sound theory.
Yeah.
But its implementation is completely flawed at this point, right?
Years.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the going back. It took that many years because the basically the processing speed caught up. No one knew.
Think about that, man. In our lifetime, I remember building IPsec tunnels that were DES.
Yeah. Sure.
And you had to get the special ASIC add-ons to the PICs to do triple.
Yeah.
And there was no AES. It wasn't even invented yet.
Yeah. At least not in implementation, because I think that, I think the theory, or I think NSA picked the original protocol, I think maybe in 98.
Somewhere around there, man. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I think they had like, because it was an open contest, right? I think they had selected it, but it hadn't been implemented at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't remember when it came out in terms of being available. Let's see when AES history.
I would say early mid 2000s, man, if I remember right. It seems like a lifetime ago. Well, I mean, it was 17 years ago, let's say. 15 years ago, easy.
So NIST announced it on October 2nd, 2000, that it became the standard. But let's see. (1997) was when it was created.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least that's when it was not created. That was when it was submitted. So it took NIST 3 years to evaluate all these protocols. So I was pretty close from memory. And then 2000, and then I don't remember, maybe the mid 2000s is when it first became available. So I mean, that's just mind blowing. So what we'll have seen in our lifetime, the amount of protocols that have been deprecated due to computing speed and being able to crack. Basically, every hashing algorithm has become bad. There was a lot, right? So now you have to be at like SHA-256, no, 512, right? Is it 512 now? So all the other ones, MD5, MD4, MD2, all gone. DES, triple DES. AES 128 is no longer valid after 2020.
Hashing is actually a really good analogy here to blockchain. I think a lot of what has led to issues with the various hashing algorithms is their misuse or misimplementation past what their intended function ought to be, right? And I kind of view hashing to be stable because at least we know how it ought to be used and it's still useful in those manners. But that's what I worry about with blockchain and calling it what I would say is unstable is how do how are you really supposed to take advantage of it? For what purpose does it exist?
Right.
It ain't just cryptocurrency.
No, no. I mean, they're using it for that, but the whole idea is it's just a ledger system.
Mm-hmm.
And if something, I mean, here's a great way, as I was explaining it to them here at the bank, the mortgage loan processing.
Mm-hmm.
If each piece in the block, you do it, almost like waterfall from a development methodology. As soon as one piece stops, no other pieces can keep going. It's blocked. Right. I don't have X amount of paperwork. It's not been processed. Can't move forward. There's no sense to getting people to closing. Closing is like the very last thing. So why did people show up for closing and all of a sudden the loan doesn't close? Well, because someone forgot to do something up above.
Mm-hmm.
And blockchain would have said, don't do it.
Right. See, I think that's actually an insightful use of it.
Yeah. So there'll be, but for me, as I continue to tell them, yeah, there's pieces that we could use, no doubts about it. But what happens if we choose variant A, but the standard became variant E? Now we're going to have to redo everything because we have to share our information with variant E.
Right.
And that is a concern of mine, and people can say, no, that's not possible. Well, how many people had to go ahead and they put all these, all of a sudden you see all these manufacturers when it came to Wi-Fi access points started putting out the proposed standard, and all of a sudden it changed.
Well, I mean, we can go all the way back to beta and VHS.
Yeah.
As formats. I mean, we all know by standard and by implementation, beta was superior, but VHS ended up winning. So everybody that had invested in Betamax, right?
Yeah.
You had to retool. You see it in factories too, right? Well, even down to the production of silicon chips. Look at what's happening with GPUs right now between AMD and NVIDIA.
Yeah. Bringing this back to the original intent of the conversation happened to be about your professor friend and the people not wanting to think about the philosophical aspects. They don't know how to. They really, in reality, they don't know how to think.
No, well, and it's the exact same thing, in my opinion, as what you were saying with Neil deGrasse Tyson's comment about people criticizing him as if he were an atheist. Well, I mean, you've made some false assumptions there based on your old worldview that you can't see outside of. Yeah. And so it's this limitation of not being able to envision what something could be like if, let's say, X happens. Well, I mean, if you don't realize that there's a possibility, you can't comprehend the possibility itself.
Right. And he said something else which was so interesting to me, because this is when people ask me, why am I not presenting at security conferences anymore? I said, why? They should all know the answer. No matter what I say, they're not going to agree. Right. There's going to be people out there that just they don't agree because they already know all the answers, yet they're not decision makers, nor do they have the budget to influence, but yet there's still all these problems.
Right.
So I have no desire. I want to go to talk to people that are in business. Whole reason why I'm doing an MBA is to understand the business speaking, to increase my network of people that are acting in an unhealthy technological manner, and I can help them, and vice versa. So he had said that he wanted to create a show and a book for people who have either no understanding of science and that don't necessarily want to know anything about science. And I want to be able to market something that's for them.
Yeah.
They don't understand that everything we have is from science. The majority of the stuff that what we have today is from the space program.
Mm-hmm.
Because no one wanted to take a cord and figure out how to make it, I don't know what, we'll just say it was an exaggeration, a mile long so they can drill into something. So that's why we have cordless drills. And now whenever you go somewhere, you want a cordless drill. Well, we had to do that because, well, how else are we going to fix something on a satellite? Because we can't plug it in.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And as you keep on going throughout all of these things, so one of the books he's working on, or maybe he's already done, which was essentially the unofficial reason why, I don't even remember what he said, but basically how, there's a direct correlation, and people can see how biologists will help war, because take a biological weapon and turn it into that. Same thing with chemists. Same thing. You can see all of these things, but with physicists, not necessarily. Or astrophysicists, it's not a direct, because it's so far out into the future.
Right.
And then things trickle down. But what the brilliant part of what he's doing is he's figuring out a way in which to market and get people interested in science that, one, couldn't understand it because that's not what they do, and two, for even people who said they don't want it at all, and now they're getting interested in it. And I'm like, that's quite brilliant.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's particularly what he's good at as an individual.
Yeah. It is something that, I just enjoy listening to him. But it's for all the people that call him Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'm like, nope, sorry, he's Neil to me because we both have doctorates. You have to call him deGrasse Tyson.
Oh man, that's rich. Oh man. So there was a UFC last night. I don't know if you know.
A what?
Yeah. Derek Lewis versus Cormier.
Was McGregor fighting?
No.
That's why I didn't know about the UFC fight then.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't know what was on that card. I know that Cormier was fighting Derek Lewis. I know that Cormier won. No surprise. Derek Lewis had no business being in there. He's a funny cat with some straight up knockout power. He is the truest definition of he has a puncher's chance.
Right.
He's got dynamite in those hands. Cormier was not going to stand up with that guy. No way.
Well, he didn't have to.
Anyone.
That's the power of a wrestler.
Yeah.
Did you so you saw they've announced and signed, had a press conference yesterday or the day before with John Jones and Alexander Gustafsson. This is a rematch, right?
Yeah.
And so did you see the weigh-in? Or not the weigh-in, the
yeah, they're each trying to step in front of each other. Yeah. And
then he pushed him. Did you see the interview with John Jones? I think it was with Ariel Helwani afterwards.
No.
Classic. This is exactly why I personally think John Jones is a piece of shit. Okay, because I do. And here's why. So Ariel Helwani, I think it was, or it might have been Brett Okamoto, somebody, man. They're NPCs. You can just change them in and out. Doesn't matter. They asked John Jones, why did you do that? And Jones's answer, I'll summarize, is, well, I've matured and I think I've grown as a person. And so I instigated it by stepping in front of him first. And so, like, those two statements put together are so anachronistic that I couldn't figure out if he was trolling. And then I was thinking about Tito Ortiz fighting Chuck Liddell, and I realized that John Jones is just a Tito Ortiz character, where he wants to pretend as if he's something other than he is, and what he really is just a moron.
Yeah, that's the funny thing is Tito Ortiz is more of a character, because the people who have trained with him would say he's an amazing person to train with, but when he gets, like, I believe McGregor is like this all the time. Like, I think that it's not really a shtick for McGregor. I think he just over exemplifies or amplifies rather that persona. I think Tito Ortiz is playing a character versus how he is in his personal life. If I had from basically what I've read and what people have said, two completely different personas. I think John Jones, you're right, personally is a piece of shit. He really is just someone that is just, this is who he is. He's not a nice person. I can't think of anyone that's spoken kind words about John Jones in training or anything along those lines.
Well, right. See, to me, this is the difference. If John Jones never talked ever and everything else was the same, I don't think I would feel the way that I feel when I see him talk. You see him, right?
Yeah.
Because then it is that, and it's self-contained and it's this thing. It's when he tries to take on this persona that is the opposite of how he actually behaves, that it's like, well, I mean, clearly you think we're dumb enough that we can't see how you really are, which probably is what I take offense to. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a great point, because this is what we can see. His words don't align with his actions.
Right.
And
Right.
no matter what, your actions say more than your words do.
Yeah, well, you're in an optimal place when those two things are aligned. When you do what you say, and you what you say is consistent with what you do, then I think you're in an optimal position.
Sure.
When one of those is out of whack, then I mean, I'm only left with two conclusions speculatively. Either you're a moron, like a complete moron, and you're just spouting nonsense, or you're malicious and you're aware that you're not being consistent, but you think you're going to game everybody somehow, and that's maliciousness.
They're no Sith. They don't understand. If they were true Sith, they would get it.
Yeah. Well, right. You're right though. It's almost like John Jones and characters like that, because he's certainly not the only one. He's not the only one that you and I know necessarily. Yeah. It's as if they're stuck as a 12-year-old playing a villain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's like the extent of their ability.
Yeah.
Whereas look at Chael Sonnen as a counterexample. He knows how to play the heel. He knows how to play the villain. He enjoys it. He's fine with it. He embraces it. But I don't think he's really a villain. You know what I mean?
No, I don't think that he is. I just think he's a horrible fighter.
Well, yeah, I mean, he certainly.
I mean, he talked his way, and from a marketing standpoint, I absolutely appreciate everything Chael Sonnen has done. From a fighting standpoint, I think that he is an average at best prize fighter.
I'll go out on a limb. If Dana White doesn't select Chael Sonnen to be his successor, I will lose a lot of respect for Dana White.
Dana White's got many years left. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon.
I don't either.
But I don't know.
I think
Chael Sonnen, I don't think, is that much younger than Dana White. So I don't think that's going to help anything.
I don't know, man.
The person who might choose a successor is McGregor, because McGregor is a good 15 years younger than Dana.
That's true, though. Yeah, that's a fair point. Do you think he ever thinks about it? Do you think that conversation ever comes up?
With who, Dana and McGregor?
Yeah.
I don't think Dana has ever said anything to McGregor about it in terms of being the successor to the UFC. But has Dana maybe said to McGregor, you need to start figuring out how to build a promotion? And that's where he's going.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's built now. Whether or not McGregor chooses to do that later, highly unlikely. You know, he's got a long way to go. But I mean, dude's only what, 29, or is he 30 now?
He might, if anything, he just turned 30.
Okay, he's got a long way to go, right? But he's got an opportunity to certainly do a lot more. And he needs to. He probably needs to drop back down to lightweight and own that for a while. I mean, people don't understand. There was a big difference between him and Nurmagomedov when it just came to weight. But McGregor, his takedown defense was tremendously better from when he went against Nate Diaz. It was tremendously better. He just needs to keep working on it. I mean, he's got an absolute stone cold killer helping him with his BJJ. I mean, that cat, I love, you know, watching him with doing all the different repeats of him doing, you know, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and even his fight at what's the other promotion? I always forget the name of the other promotion because it doesn't really have a whole lot of people in it.
Before he was in the UFC, I'm not sure.
No, he's never in the UFC. The guy that is his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach.
Oh, Dylan Dennis.
Yeah, Dylan Dennis.
Oh yeah, yeah. I thought you were talking about McGregor himself. Oh yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
yeah.
McGregor's BJJ coach. Dylan Dennis is an absolute stud when it comes to. I mean, if he gets a hold of anything, I mean, he tapped this one dude out in less than a minute with his debut over at the other promotion.
Yeah.
It
Well,
was
yeah, because what is he in Bellator?
Bellator. That's it.
Yeah.
So they went to the ground. He went from limb to limb and eventually got a hold of the dude's leg, couldn't get the knee bar, and toe hooked him. And dude tapped quick. It was done. I mean, that cat. And it's so funny because he actually knew Nurmagomedov before the fight.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Dylan was very young at the training place where he's at. Nurmagomedov came there, and Nurmagomedov was talking all this trash. Essentially, said that it was something along the lines of, if Samba were easy, it would be called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So that's when Dylan Dana started wearing a shirt. If Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu were shit, it would be called Samba. But that's how all it started, because basically, evidently, Nurmagomedov treated Dylan Danis when he was like 16 years old like a piece of shit, and Danis never forgot that.
Yeah.
Dylan Danis is a straight up killer. People are like, oh, well, he doesn't have a perfect record in BJJ. I don't know that anyone does.
Yeah. What? Right. Right. These are sports where it's an exception to go undefeated for any serious length of time.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, so I think McGregor continuing to build up a good stable of people like that. People want to, I mean, no different than what's his name out there in Arizona. Where John Jones.
Oh, the Winklejohn.
Was it Winklejohn?
Yeah, that's the. I don't. The camp has a slightly different name, but that's the dude that founded that. Yeah.
Oh, there was another one then that was. I'll have to find the name because there's a bunch of people who have trained there over the years. Randy Couture started there before he did his own. I'll have to find it.
I don't know.
A whole bunch of people. It was. I don't remember. I'll find out some of the.
It doesn't. I don't know that it really matters. I know who you're talking about. I don't know, man. It'll be interesting to see what's next for all these characters.
Yeah,
but you're right. I mean, they got to market them and do something, because I can't imagine we're the only two that feel this way. That if Conor McGregor isn't fighting, I ain't paying for it.
Basically, that's the way I feel. I don't think anyone. There's just no one on the roster that moves the needle. Like I enjoy watching John Jones fight. I think he's a brilliant fighter. I just can't stand him personally as a human being. Mm-hmm. So I have no desire to pay for his fights.
Right.
So Greg Jackson. Yeah.
Jackson. Yeah. That's yeah.
Yeah, it's Jackson Winklejohn, but yeah, it's Greg Jackson's camp. That I mean, he's just, I mean, the amount of people he's trained is amazing. But Conor's got to build up a name like that, and I think he certainly can. I mean, the way he approaches fights is tremendous. Even when he loses, I mean, still he had the right game plan. At that point it was about execution. He just couldn't execute it. Sure. Game plan sound, execution not sound. John Jones, his execution is typically, he's lost one fight, and that was against that deaf guy who didn't want any part of it anymore from the, I don't know whatever illegal blow wound up occurring.
Elbows.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, which I mean is super controversial.
Yeah,
the way they called that, but I don't know. It's like this, man. I would imagine that when you were younger, if you were going to drink beer, you got beer based on how much it cost. And so being young and not having a lot of cash, you probably drank cheap beer, right? Most people do. But then when you grow up a little bit, you get a little money and you taste that really good stuff. You like never have
Jesus.
Yeah. You never have a reason to go back and drink the cheap stuff. Like it's just not satisfying. And so that's the problem the UFC has is they have a couple big beat people like Conor McGregor being the top one. Ronda Rousey when she was not losing and still there. And now you have everybody else, which even in their being average are still light years beyond anything else outside of the UFC. But you can't really market them because you have these couple of people that are huge exceptions. And that's what everybody wants to see.
So I'm going to give that. Here's my John Jones analogy for that. Bring it to the other sports world. John Jones is to the UFC as to what Alex Rodriguez was to baseball. All the talent in the world, personally, a piece of shit and a cheater.
Yeah.
Because there is no reason why Alex Rodriguez ever needed to do any type of performance-enhancing drugs. Zero. This guy was the perfect specimen for an athlete. Could have, and actually did play all sports in high school. Could have done basketball if he wanted, or football with no issues. Chose baseball, probably the smartest, longest career, most money you can make over a term. That's John Jones.
Mm-hmm.
All the talent in the world. If you had to create a fighter, that John Jones is it. He's got the mental acuity to do it and the physical acumen to be able to pull it off. And still, for his quest to be the best, did not believe in himself enough, meaning he would not bet on himself. And if you're not willing to bet on yourself, why should anyone else? Chose to do performance-enhancing drugs.
Well, I go back to a question I've mentioned before in another context, and I'll leave it at this. I got to get ready to go to the Dinosaur Museum. What is wrong in your life, because something is, that your answer to that problem is to become this self-destructive? Because that's not normal.
Not people not willing to bet on themselves.
Yeah. Well, so the answer to that isn't working out harder. The answer to that is developing yourself mentally, which goes back to your Neil deGrasse Tyson thing, right? You have scientific truth, which is inherently falsifiable because it's empirical. And then you have supernatural truth, which is phenomenal. It's personal and it's subjective. And they're not the same thing. They don't really interact well. And they don't need to, because they're just two different forms of reality.
Yeah.
But to be complete, you need both.
Right. Oh, that was the other thing that he gets a lot of shit from, because he refuses to do ADE. He goes, I put things in AD. It's AD, it's BC. People don't understand how the calendar was created. It was the calendar that we have, and he went through all the science, is the most brilliant calendar of all time, and it was created by the Catholic Church.
That's true. Yeah.
And so I give credit where credit is due. It's a brilliant scientific calendar. Therefore, in all of my writings, it's AD.
Well, it's like there was some hubbub last week about Stephen Hawking's last book that's being published posthumously. And apparently he explicitly states there is no God. Who gives a flying shit? Why? I've never understood in the debate of whether there is a supernatural God or not, why there's a need to claim these historical characters as being on your side versus the other. Like somehow that change, rather than actually arguing your points and trying to grow, you just want to like stack your army. You know what I mean? It's like having a more powerful commander in Warhammer. What?
Right. I mean, I just look at it like this. Like, I have a faith that's very personal to me. No one's going to change that. And I'm not going to try and change someone else's view on that. It's my personal truth. This is what I believe. But yet, you and I don't agree on that. We talk about why I believe this, and you talk about why you believe that, and it gets, all right, cool. We leave it at that. We have another scotch.
Yeah. Well, people's minds, the only way to understand them is to go visit them, like their planets. That's really much the way I see it. And the only way we know how to do that right now is through conversation.
Right.
Like dialogue. I'm not interested in conversion one way or the other. I'm interested in understanding.
Right. That's it. And I have no problem with any of those things. It's those that try to inflict their personal truth onto you. No one can prove one way or the other the existence of a God. It's not able to be proven. And that's the whole reason why they call it faith.
Right. It's supernatural because it's beyond science. That doesn't mean it's not real.
Right. So anyway, like what my homie Neil says, the most scientific and accurate calendar that exists, and he went through all the science, even the reason why we did certain things for 2000. Most people are like, oh, what was a leap year? He goes, no, It was a special leap year because it was also divisible by 400, which
That's right.
Catholic Church even took into account, not only the reason why you have a leap day, why after so many you still have to do something else in order to get it on pace, because the Earth rotates differently all the time, and they were able to see this. I mean,
Right.
I didn't know all of that. I mean, he just broke it down. I'm like, awesome. And Joe Rogan is hilarious with him.
They're actually good together, man. They're actually really good.
Yeah. So anyway, I know you got to go to the dinosaur museum. Say hello to my homie Velociraptor, because it is the most badass dinosaur.
Man, as a little kid, my mom was a librarian, so I grew up in the library. That's where I would go. And man, all I wanted to be was a paleontologist. I would study and memorize and read as much as I could.
My daughter can name like every dinosaur by sight.
Hell yeah, man.
I don't even know what that is. And I'm like, well, which one's your favorite? And I'll probably mispronounce it, but it's basically it's the one that's a lizard with the big fin on it, the Domomegalodon or something like that.
Oh, the Dimetrodon.
Yeah. I'm like,
it looks like a sail.
Yeah. That's her favorite. And I'm like, what? Like, she could name everything. I'm like, which one's this? She's 4.
Yeah, man. That's all I wanted to do when I was a kid, was go dig up fossils.
It was like this past summer, went there, and we're walking by, and she's like, Papa, that's a Toyota, that's a Nissan, by the symbol. Every car. Oh, that's got our last name. That's Ford. Can't read, but by the symbol, she can go through all of them. I'm like, what?
It's amazing, man. They pick it up as long as you let them be and encourage them to explore, man.
Yep.
It's surprising. It's scary how fast they can absorb and integrate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got to get to that 94 in the bag.
That's right, man. Jesus, 6 more. So we only really need 3 weeks if we do 2 a week, and we can make 100 by the end of the year.
That'll be tough to do 2 a week, but I think we can get there.
Yeah, we maybe double up on a Sunday, because of course Ken's still sleeping.
Who?
Yeah.
Oh, that dude that we have come on every once in a while with those crazy, stupid AirPods.
I was going to say the AirPod bro.
Yeah, because I didn't even know his name was Ken. Glad you.
All right, everybody. That's 94.
Be excellent to one another.
Have a good week. Bye.